as much as I love JuJu Smith-Schuster, 111 receptions, 1,426 yards, averaging more than 12 yards a catch. It's easier to do with Antonio Brown on the opposite side of the field as the number one option. Now you're going to acquire that level of attention that was aimed in Antonio Brown's direction. I think it's going to be considerably harder. James Conner, we all respect him. Less than 1,000 yards rushing, had like 900 and change, but averaged 4.5 yards a carry. We know, he's the guy without the sizzle per se, but very productive, as you pointed out, playmaker. But here's my reality. We all know he's no Le'Veon Bell. And JuJu Smith-Schuster, even though he has the potential to be an Antonio Brown, we don't know that as of yet. When I look at Big Ben Roethlisberger, I consider him the key. Last year, from a numbers perspective, was a career year for him. Had 5,100 and change passing yards, a career high, 34 touchdowns, a career high. Obviously, Randy Fichtner, the new offensive coordinator, who was your quarterback's coach, you worked under him for the first year, and so you got rid of the acerbic Todd Haley that was constantly in your face and whatever, but that didn't prove to be beneficial because I'm looking at the Steelers losing 4 of their last 6 games, and I'm looking at Big Ben Roethlisberger, playmaker. They lost to Denver, the Chargers, and Oakland in consecutive games. Ben Roethlisberger threw for 462 yards against Denver, all right, completed 64% of his passes against the Chargers, threw for 281 and then 282 against Oakland, where he completed 86% of his passes. They still lost. And, of course, they lost to New Orleans 31-28 when JuJu Smith-Schuster suffered that turnover. The reality is that with the changes that have taken place in Pittsburgh, with Antonio Brown and with Le'Veon Bell, with both of them speaking out against Big Ben, the eye of the storm is on Big Ben. I expect JuJu Smith-Schuster to produce. I expect James Conner to produce. But it's not enough for Big Ben Roethlisberger to get his numbers. What he has to do is galvanize the troops in such a fashion that they elevate their level of play in ways that even numbers may not show. I don't know if that can happen, and that is why I'm saying I'm not going to just assume that Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell are going to be usurped by JuJu and James Conner.
I was prepared to run this race on a different track, run down a different road. But you just required Big Ben. You require something of Big Ben outside of throwing passes.
That's right.
You just require Big Ben to do what I just told you Aaron Rodgers need to do the last block, which is raise people up. Now, how can you do this to me?
Because Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell departed and talked about Big Ben Roethlisberger being a big reason why. That did not happen to Aaron Rodgers. That's why. That's the answer to my question.
A lot of people talk about Aaron Rodgers.
Excuse me.
A lot of
talking about players. That dude that's been retired for years. Ain't nobody president did that.
Talk about Aaron Rodgers. Let me get to this. Let me get to this because I do believe they'll be able to fill the void. And when you talk about fill the void, I'm talking about produce the numbers that these guys have produced. When you go back to looking at his second year, JuJu puts up 111 receptions. Make it comparable. Give it AB's second year. He only has 69 receptions. JuJu dropped 1,400 yards. I told Jerry Jones, this is the only dude, this the dude I went to Jerry Jones and almost got down on my knees and begged to draft with JuJu Smith-Schuster. Because, again, I worked out with him. I saw this kid, I said he'll be the perfect guy to come in as a number 2 and take over as a number 1. And that's exactly what he'll have the ability to do. They'll put up the same numbers. They'll put up the same numbers. The only thing that we have an ability to question, is can they produce in the playoffs? Now, Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown never produced in the playoffs to the tune of a Super Bowl. So it's not like to surpass them, they got to go win a Super Bowl. They just got to get in the playoffs and make plays. I believe the Steelers are in good position with the young talent they have. And now what they have to do is tell Ben, let's play Steeler football, Ben. I know you want to be considered one of the greatest quarterbacks. Those numbers you rattled off at the end of the year, they lost those games because Ben wanted to win them throwing the football. They wanted to win him throwing the football. James Conner no longer was a big factor. He needs to go. And this way, now Pittsburgh Steelers, with James Conner leading, you can win running back by committee. All you guys talking about, you can't replace Le'Veon Bell, but when Le'Veon Bell said, give me the money because you can't replace me, everybody said, no way, you don't deserve the money. They can replace you with a committee of backs. Now they can replace him with this committee of backs. And they use that to win football games, not just use Ben Roethlisberger throwing the football.
I want to go back to your argument that you said about Antonio Brown, because you brought up his second year in the league when he had 69 receptions for 1,100 and change.
Right.
Okay?
And JuJu won MVP of the team last year.
I would remind you the two don't compare. Here's why. JuJu had Antonio Brown to lean on and take the pressure off, who's an all-world receiver, considered the top 2 receiver in the game.
At the time that
Antonio Brown was on the Steelers in his second year, Mike Wallace was the leading receiver, but he wasn't the caliber of Antonio Brown. Hines Ward was relatively on the downside.
Mike Wallace had a great year now. Mike Wallace had a great year prior to that.
I didn't say he didn't have a good year. I said he was no Antonio Brown. That was last year. That's what I said. So you didn't have that kind of guy to lean on. Don't get slick on me. You understand? That's all I'm trying to say. That's why you laughing. You tried to slide one in there. I ain't letting you do it. The fact is, Antonio Brown was all world, and as a result, defenses game planned for him. They didn't necessarily have to game plan for a bunch of other dudes. That wasn't the case.
I always say this. And this is why I'm okay with what happened in Pittsburgh. It's not the way I would want it to happen, but it happened. I always say this. This game, in this league, football, it's too hard to win Super Bowls. You can't do it being a football team. You can't do it even being a football organization. This only happens when you become a football family, because the road to a championship is paved with peaks and valleys. You can handle the peaks, everybody happy, but the valleys tear teams apart. And if you're not a family to come together in those valleys, you have problems. Now, without Antonio Brown, without Le'Veon Bell, they'll have a chance now, again, to become that family.
So you buying into what Tomlin said, the cleanser. You buying into what Tomlin said about we've had a cleansing.
Well,
that's what you buying into?
I'm buying into the realities of what helped me win on every level that I ever played on a championship, and that was a football family.
Thank you so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app, and for live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.